With Konami announcing a Silent Hill transmission and Sony hosting a state of play on the same day, I knew we were in for a treat. We just got our first proper look at Silent Hill Townfall, the next main release in the series. At the PlayStation State of Play, we got a trailer detailing the town it's set in, a look at our main protagonist, along with some very Silent Hill-esque creatures, and even some small gameplay. And then, in the Silent Hill transmission, which followed shortly after, we got a much deeper insight into the developers, Screenburn, who will be developing this title. I believe Silent Hill Townfall is taking the franchise in an interesting direction, and it almost builds off of Silent Hill F in a way, with some similar design philosophy. While this was a brief look into the game, I still want to analyse the new trailer and all the behind the scenes info. Let me now break it down for you all and tell you my findings. Now, Silent Hill Townfall isn't the new reveal by any means. This was actually first announced all the way back in 2022, along with the revival of the franchise, making this the last of all of those projects to release. With this game's initial teaser trailer, we really didn't get a lot of info on what this game was even about, just a brief cryptic teaser of images and radio static, all played through a small portable TV. And with the state of play, we got our first proper look at the game. This new trailer opens with a shot of the CRTV, previously seen in the teaser trailer. This is a crucial part of the game's gameplay, as you will see later on. A woman is heard speaking over the radio, pleading to a man named Simon, begging him to leave this room he is in. A man then picks up the radio as the woman on it urges Simon to come back to her despite it being a hard feat to accomplish. This is our main protagonist, Simon Ordle, a man in his late 30s who receives this strange message. The trailer then cuts to a grey, foggy little coastal town. We get some excellent shots of the town's docks covered in a thick blanket of fog, as we hear some series staple piano keys. We see Simon emerge from the shore. Disorientated, Simon comments on how he has woken up in the water again, although this time it's different. Could this allude to this game being a loop of sorts? Simon then wanders the streets of this foggy town, which is revealed to be St. Emilia, a Scottish coastal town. We then get a beautiful shot showcasing some of the houses and roads of this town, all caked in a thick layer of fog. The atmosphere here is perfectly Silent Hill. However, it has a relatability to it for me personally, which I'll get into a little later on. As we get more gorgeous shots of this locale, we see a statue surrounded by posters, all of which reference a curse or something bad happening in the town. Simon has a somber tone in his voice now, as he says that he keeps trying to fix what happened. Simon is then seen messing around with the portable TV device from earlier, which actually shows a location on its display. Simon states that no matter what he does, then the female voice from the intro interjects and says that he can't fix it. What exactly is this game's main themes? Why do the characters here sound so sad? And what exactly did Simon do that he can't fix? We then see Simon find an old revolver and a couple of bullets inside of a wooden box, confirming that this game will have firearm combat. The pistol here seems to be modelled after the Webley revolver. This was a standard issue revolver for the armed forces in the UK. It was used from the late 1800s to the early 1960s, which should explain why Simon was able to find a gun here, since they are pretty hard to acquire in Scotland. Simon is seen with a medical ID bracelet on his hand, which gives us his age of 37, and his full name along with his blood type. Why is he wearing this? In addition to that, he is seen with an IV bag on his arm with a drip running down his arm into his hand. The woman from the intro is heard saying that Simon can't change things and that he did what he did. After some developer cards, we get some breathtaking shots of this game in action. We see that this game will take on the first person perspective, which the series has dabbled with in some entries and odd releases, but never for a full game. We also see Simon wielding the portable TV, as well as that a creature's outline can be seen in the distance, shrouded by the fog. We see what could potentially be this game's otherworld, along with our first close-up creature shots. This humanoid creature has this crackly texture to its body. While looking mostly human, it still looks off. It then suddenly sprouts an IV drip from a cavity in its chest, which is so disgusting, but also perfectly Silent Hill. We get an even better look at our next monster. This creature has again a mostly humanoid design. However, it has this long rectangle shape protruding out of its head, and its arms are restrained by what looks to be a straitjacket. We get to see the portable TV used in gameplay, as Simon is actually able to use its display to see nearby enemies. This is an evolution of the classic radio seen in the majority of the games. Players will have to tune the correct frequencies on the device in order to get a look ahead at potential danger, and I absolutely love this idea, as not only does it keep the radio concept, but it evolves it further. We get to see what this game's melee and firearm combat will look like. Simon, equipped with the series' famous wooden plank, is able to dish out some main attacks, all while being able to block oncoming attacks as well, in what looks to be a very condemned style melee system. We also see Simon use the revolver he found earlier, although this kinda looks a bit janky. I guess it's the way it's displayed here. Anyways, I'm glad we have firearm combat. The trailer ends with a creature unleashing a burst of IV drips from its chest, which cuts to the title card, along with a release year of 2026, which is very exciting. A very interesting trailer indeed. Although this didn't have me super excited, aside from the fact it was releasing in this year. However, that was just the state of play, and a full Silent Hill transmission would follow it, with the series producer Motoi Okamoto introducing members of Annapurna Interactive and Screenburn. We get to see some developer insights into how they're developing this title. Screenburn, a Scottish-based game studio, wanted to create a game that was familiar, a world that they had all, in some way or another, experienced and lived in. Having the game be set in Scotland, where the devs are from, makes it more relatable and scarier to the devs and people who have experienced similar environments. On top of that, first person was the game's chosen camera style, due to how it limits the player view, and in general, I think first person is scarier than third person. This camera perspective is also related to the game's radio. The CRTV, first seen all the way back in the game's teaser trailer, was a big deal in development here. The devs wanted to tackle the series' staple item of the radio and not only evolve it, but make something unique to Townfall. Thus, we have the CRTV, which can be used to see enemies in a short range if the frequency is tuned correctly. This allows players to evade enemies easier. It also sets up gameplay moments where you can either sneak past an enemy or know where they are so you can launch a surprise attack. I really like the CRTV, it feels so fresh and exciting. It's also mentioned that the CRTV will be used by players to discover narrative content throughout the game, which sounds very familiar to Harry Mason's phone in Silent Hill Shattered Memories, which I personally like a lot. The devs spent a lot of time on the game's locale and environments. Some of the developers even commented how familiar the game's environments are to them, saying that it feels like a childhood walk to school. Much like how Silent Hill F took inspiration from Japanese culture and architecture, which then Japanese natives would find both familiar and scary, this is the same here for this Scottish setting. I mentioned earlier that this game was rather relatable to me, and well, I'm not Scottish, nor have I ever been to Scotland. However, Scotland and Ireland, where I'm from and live, share a lot of architecture and landscape similarities. Genuinely, throughout the gameplay footage we've seen, it felt like I'd been to some of these locations. The winding paths and alleyways, the houses, walls and signs, it all felt so familiar and real to me, which I haven't ever felt about another survival horror game. This familiarity, I believe, is what won me over in the end. These gorgeous environments really showcase what a Silent Hill game would be like in this part of the world. And while this isn't a concept I'd ever thought about in my head, I'm so glad it exists. And man, I just can't get out of my head how familiar this game's town feels to me, which has me just so excited to go explore every nook and cranny of this game. Now, as for Simon himself, he is mentioned to be a layered, uncertain and deeply human character. Screenburn understands the sheer expectation that fans have for its characters, so I'm very intrigued to hear more about Simon and his story. However, I do worry that this game may be retreading over very familiar story beats, as Simon is returned to a town he once knew to start a difficult and emotional journey. It does kinda sound all too familiar. So I do hope there is a few big surprises in store. Like for example, the theme of guilt is mentioned here. I really hope it isn't just a repeat of James Sunderland's story, as that would be a huge bummer. But the developers have said that they plan to interpret these themes in a very different way, which I'm eager to see. We also learn that the game's narrative will have some very Silent Hill progression, as some questions about Simon will be answered throughout the story, while others will be a mystery until the very end. We will also encounter other characters, which will be exciting to see. The team at Screenburn ventured out into the real coastal town of St. Monans, which looking at its layout and design is spot on for its game counterpart. Now, having the game set in a small coastal town, the team at Screenburn is able to implement a new narrative element, that being a deep sense of isolation. Now typically that is felt in Silent Hill games, as it feels impossible to leave the town. However, with Townfall, there is an even bigger sense of this feeling, with the player feeling truly trapped and alone here. The team also had to attempt to make the town of St. Amelia feel real, lived in and full of history, and also, more importantly, like the town of Silent Hill, and I feel from what we have seen, they have nailed it. While I have some reservations about Silent Hill Townfall potentially redoing all plot points, and additionally I was also skeptical of the game taking place outside of Silent Hill. However, Screenburn truly won me over by the end of the transmission. Their passion for not only this game, but series is very apparent, and I can't wait to see even more from this game. And hey, hopefully we won't have to wait too much longer, since Townfall is releasing this year. If I was a betting man, I would estimate that this game will follow similar marketing to Silent Hill 2 Remake and F. I expect we're going to get constant story and gameplay trailers throughout the year, with a release date of roughly September, October kind of time. However, we will have to wait and see. And this is all I have for you today. Do let me know down below, what do you think of the next entry in this franchise? What do you think of Simon, the game's town, and the gameplay? Well, on that note, I think I'm done here. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I will hopefully see you on my next one. Peace.